So this is a very controversial and very, very emotional and also very, very tense story, but I don't really care because it's such an important financial and business and persuasion aspect of it. Basically, here's what happened. Some 18-year-old student at the Southampton University in the UK was stabbed to death. The perpetrator, the murderer, and I'm not going to name names because it's disrespectful, and yeah, it's disrespectful, and it's also, I also actually don't know whether there is a sentence in the case. So until a sentence has been carried out or given out, I'm going to keep the names of the parties involved anonymous. But anyway, some 18-year-old kid who was a student at the University of Southampton in the UK was stabbed to death. The perpetrator, the murderer who stabbed the guy, accused him of being a racist. He said that he'd been racially abused. So I don't know. I don't know who called the cops. I'm assuming that. Let me just read. Yeah, it says here his killer, and then name withheld by deliberation, told police at the scene that name of the blank had racially abused him. There is a footage, or actually there's a photo of a guy who was stabbed to death, laying on the ground being handcuffed because the police assumed that the killer had been racially abused. It's pretty wild. And I think the poor fella who was stabbed bled to death. Now the guy who was stabbed was white, and the murderer was dark-skinned. Now, there is a lot of contention going on in the UK. There is a big discussion about immigration, about racism, about segregation, etc., etc. I don't want to get into that because it's a whole nother topic, and it's frankly not something that I'm keen to explore. Nor is it anything that I'm actually debating or discussing. However, if you manage to think very, very evil, if you're brown-skinned or black, and you want to accuse somebody of being a racist, and you hate them so much you even want to kill them, and you know the tensions are high, and you know that routinely whiteys are getting accused of being racists, so why would you not take advantage of that situation and pretend that you were racially abused when you were not? Because it's so easy to point fingers at the white man, especially if you're black or dark-skinned in such a situation. Again, I'm saying this with full conviction, and I'm saying that this also being fully neutral on the issue. From a persuasion perspective, he did everything right. That is the killer. He found an emotional trigger. He found an emotional point. He then made it appear logical, even to the officers at the scene, that he'd been racially abused, and probably his so-called racial abuse justified the use of violence at the scene. Now, I'm suggesting, I don't really know, I'm just suggesting that the killer told the police officers at the scene that, hey, this guy called me this and that, and, he was really mean, and then he attacked me, and I had to defend myself, and regrettably this thing happened, which wasn't true. The point of the story is, this relates to what the late great Gary Halbert called, or talked about when it came to using a starving crowd. Gary Halbert's starving crowd. If you and I are having a sales competition, we're going to sell hamburgers. We're going to have our separate stands. But we each get to pick one advantage over the other. What would it be? Most people would pick the best meat, the biggest selection of fries, maybe the best cheese, etc., etc. But Gary Halbert thought about it. And he said, no, I don't want any of that. My advantage over my competition will be a starving crowd because they want to buy my burgers no matter what. And this is the same thing. The killer is in this allegory the hamburger salesman. And the police officers, the emotional police officers, is the starving crowd because they're starving for some emotion to use against somebody who's being wronged racially. Think about it. It's pretty smart, actually. It's also pretty obvious and pretty gross and illegal and criminal. And no, you shouldn't do it. But it's actually a sales lesson, or it's actually a sales lesson wrapped into a murder scene. That's what it is. If you want to learn more about sales and persuasion and business, then get subscribed to my email list. The link to do so is in the episode description wherever you're watching or listening to this. And I'll see you there.